supply is one you've heard a lot about. It's a chemical called bisphenol A, or BPA. How many of you heard of that? Put your hands up. Well, most of you have. So I'm going to call up Dr. Urvashi Rangan. She's a project director for Consumer Reports, which has just reviewed canned food and drinks. And these foods, come join me, are ones you have in your pantry. Welcome to the show. Yeah. Thank you very much. So explain a little bit about what BPA is and what you're worried about when you look at it.
Sure. BPA is a chemical that's been used for years now, actually, since the 50s. And it's used in certain types of plastic, polycarbonate, clear, hard plastics. And it's also used in the resins that line virtually every canned food.
Let me show you this. So this is an example of what we're talking about. And by the way, I always thought that cans were metal through and through. But look what you see in here. And Dr. Reagan, you can hold that up. Don't cut yourself. So we took this can and cut it in half. You notice there's a little bit of reflection in there. Can you all see that? That's plastic. And it turns out that when BPA is assessed in our bloodstream, more than 90% of us, just about everybody watching me right now, has some level of BPA in our bloodstream. Now, how does that affect, Dr. Rangan, our body chemistry? How does it affect how we live?
Well, BPA seems to have a myriad of effects, and in animal studies, we know it leads to things like obesity, infertility problems, breast and prostate cancers, diabetes, and cardiovascular risk. It's quite wide. And we know the human studies that are starting to come out now are backing up some of those observations. So at this point in time, we at Consumer Reports think people don't need to be exposed to BPA. People shouldn't have to eat it. And we'd like the Food and Drug Administration to simply ban it in any application that comes into contact with food.
In the meantime, there are things we can do to take it out of our food supply. And one of those is to recognize how to look at some of the bottling that we have, the plastics that we use to hold things like water. And so you were saying that there are actually numbering systems, which we've talked about in the show in the past, but I didn't realize that 7 was the magic number to look for. Here's an illustration, by the way, of what it will look like at the bottom of a bottle. What does this mean?
That's right. Now, not all plastics have to be labeled, but if you see the 7 along with the PC, then that you know is a polycarbonate plastic and has BPA. The 7 is a catch-all category, so lots of different plastics can be mixed in there. The telltale sign is the 7 with the PC. If there's no labeling whatsoever, then if it's a clear, hard plastic, just assume it's BPA and switch to something else for your food storage, and don't microwave anything in plastic, frankly.
Yeah, that's an important point, the microwaving. Dr. Rangan, thank you very much for joining us. Now, the third poison that I want to talk to you about is actually intended to protect us. It's added to fruits and vegetables. What do you think it is? Pesticides, right? They're added there for a lot of reasons that are defensible, but it turns out that they're not always good for us. Dr. Alan Green is a pediatrician who has written extensively about this topic. Dr. Green, come join us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And this is an environmental issue that I know has gotten a lot of attention recently. So we've moved from fish through packaging items, and now we're talking about something that is in almost everything that I recommend on the show to eat. How do you think these pesticides are affecting our health?
Well, first of all, I don't want people to panic and stop eating fruits and vegetables because they're so good for us. Right. So ways pesticides can work. One is they can be directly toxic. Neurotoxins is one example. Right here in New York City, there was a study of little kids where they measured levels of this one pesticide, followed them forward for 3 years, and the higher the levels they had, the higher the chance of ADHD and autism-like illnesses.
Yes,
and learning disabilities.
Yeah. So these are the kind of things we keep talking about with parents all the time, and we're always blaming ourselves for things we did, like immunizing them. But in fact, it might be actually the pesticides that are probably responsible in some cases.
It certainly could be in some cases. Some people, like you were hearing before, not everybody will respond, but some kids could be vulnerable to that. So yeah, direct toxins. But there was one study this year that really grabbed my attention. They took animals and they fed them the exact same food in 2 different groups, the exact same amount of food, the exact same exercise, the exact same living conditions. The only difference was one group got exposed to a little tiny bit of atrazine, the same amount many of the viewers are getting exposed to. And those animals weighed 10% more. They gained more weight. Think of whatever your weight is and add 10%.
That got their attention.
Yeah, 10% more. The same food, the same exercise, and the extra was fat. It was abdominal fat.
So again, just to underline this, pesticides could be involved in autism, attention deficit disorders, that whole spectrum of abnormalities. It also could be responsible for some of the obesity we're seeing in America.
That's right.
So let's talk a little bit about organic foods. Is it worth it to go organic?
To me, yes. That's what I choose when I feed my family and when I recommend my patients. When you do choose organic, it really does work to reduce pesticide exposure.
Well, Dr. Green, thank you very much. I want you all to know, I know this is confusing stuff, It comes at you very quickly. So what I'm going to do when we come back is give you very concrete advice, my advice, that you can take on your next shopping trip. There can be 3 ways you can protect your health from these 3 poisons that we just covered as soon as we get back.
Coming up, if you had to pick just one fruit and one vegetable to buy organic, which would you choose?
I wouldn't pick the ones that actually have the highest levels, like nectarines and strawberries and things like that.
Wait till you discover what you should choose and why. Plus, Dr. Oz recommendations on specific types of fish.
There are some that are a little bit more toxic than others.
And get ready, there could be a surprise in that can of tuna.
We checked it, and you know what we found?
Simple steps to reduce the risk to your family.
تاخد هالوردة الحمراء.
هلأ أنت عن جد أستاذ؟ بتدرس موسيقى؟ طيب أنا بدي إياك تعلمني.
رأفت شايف هي البنت؟ صوت عظيم، فيني خليها تشارك بالمهرجانات خلال 6 شهور. بتشارك؟ هذا الشيء بشع كثير، وأنت ما احترمتي حدا. ما عاد أعرف يا ترى هالبنت جوهرة ولا لساته فحم لهلا.
مراد ورأفت تراهنوا عليكي انت. فهمتي شو انت؟ وعرفتي هلا شو حدودك؟
ايه فهمت. بائعة الورد الليلة 9 KSA على MBC 4.
Have you heard? With the best ever toning technology from Pond's, Flawless White is clinically proven to reduce dark spots and even skin tone in just 7 days. Pond's Flawless White, our best ever.
Welcome back. We're talking about 3 poisons in the food supply: mercury in fish, bisphenol A, also called BPA, in canned foods and drinks, and finally pesticides in produce. Now I'm going to reveal 3 ways you can protect yourself the next time you go shopping. The first way to protect yourself from poisons in the food supply is to buy organic produce. However, it is more expensive. So Dr. Green, just a practical, simple question for a lot of folks who are watching who just don't know where to spend their money. If you had to pick what to buy in the organic category in produce, what would you say are the most important? Vegetables and fruits.
So if I were going to pick one vegetable and one fruit, I wouldn't pick the ones that actually have the highest levels, like nectarines and strawberries and things like that. I would pick the apple for the fruit, because most people eat so many apples, and it's number 2 fruit consumed in the U.S. And for vegetables, I would pick the potato, because it often has the highest level of pesticides, and it's not just on the skin, it gets inside the potato.
Yeah. Second way that you can protect yourself from poison in the food supply is to eat fish that are lower in mercury. And I say that because so often we make decisions about fish saying, hey, you know what, it's heart healthy, it's got the right omega-3 fatty acids, but there are things you can do to reduce the amount of mercury that you're getting in the fish that you eat. So besides the salmon, you can eat younger fish and smaller fish, like herrings and sardines, that a lot of us in our food supply don't think about it very much. They actually have a lot less mercury in them. And there's some fish recommendations I want to be clear with you on, because there's some that are a little bit more toxic than others. Sushi, tuna, tilefish, these are fish you probably shouldn't be eating too commonly in order to lower your exposure to mercury, or else you're going to be spending 6 months not having any fish to wash it out if you get any of that fish fog that we spoke of earlier. For tuna, you can get it in a can or in a pouch, but guess what? We checked it. And you know what we found? We found that, in fact, the tuna that's better quality tuna, the albacore tuna, the solid white tuna, it actually had more mercury in it than the inexpensive chunk light tuna. Now, I say this to you because most folks think more expensive is better. And you know what? The albacore tuna is a bigger fish. It's an older fish. It does tend to taste better for a lot of folks, and that's why they charge you more for it. Right? We clear on fish? Young fish, small fish. On the fruit side, we want especially apples and potatoes and the fruit and vegetable category. You want them to be organic if possible. So we're left with the third bit of advice, which is how to avoid BPA in packaged foods. And Dr. Rangan, your magazine Consumer Reports actually did a whole piece on this and recommended avoiding these altogether. So what options are left?
That's right. I mean, the small test we did, we looked at 19 different canned foods. Virtually all of them had BPA in the food itself because the stuff actually breaks down from the lining and gets into the food. And really, all of them approach our level of concern when it comes to BPA. Our advice to consumers is choose fresh whenever possible. It's just good advice anyway. And if you can't find fresh, then look for alternative packaging. Things like juice boxes instead of juice cans. Things like plastic freezer bags instead of the vegetables in the can. And things that are packaged in glass. Those are all better alternative packagings, at least for now, until we get a change in the liners in these cans.
So same thing I always say, eat fresh if you can. Frozen's just fine. It maintains most of the nutrient value, and it's a great option. It's also very cost effective. And I think for a lot of us, those are the pathways we want to take in choosing the way we package our products and the ways we buy organic and the way we select our fish. Is it clear to everybody? I want to thank Dr. Rangan, Dr. Hightower, Dr. Green. Thank you all very much for your wonderful insights. We'll be right back.